Not yet. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Will the audience please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Councilmember Leslie Daigle, and please remain standing for the invocation.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Lord, we, your servants, gather tonight and ask your blessings upon our city and our community. We ask for wisdom in the decisions we make and for compassion as we address the issues which confront our residents. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, we have no presentations tonight. Notice to the public, Madam City Clerk.
The city provides a yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the council. Speakers must limit comments to 5 minutes on agenda items. The council has the discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn cell phones off or set them in the silent mode.
Okay, Councilmember Daigle.
Yes, I attended the tree lighting ceremony at Crystal Cove, which was really delightful. They put a tree on the sand, one of the few that I'm aware of in California, and they also had an open house afterwards hosted by the Crystal Cove Alliance, and the food and beverage was catered by Sage Restaurant, happens to be located in my district. And one of the major offerings of Crystal Cove, of course, is their public overnight stays. So they're very oriented towards the public, and it was just a wonderful Christmas holiday event. And then secondly, I know that the Economic Development Committee had looked at the idea of a Go Local shopping campaign, and it was something some of the businesses had asked me about, and I appreciate Councilman Henn taking that to the committee. What I would be interested, though, is a report from the staff, if they could let me know, and it could be a receive and file or an off-agenda report would be acceptable as well, if I could understand a little bit more what the concerns and objections were, as well as what supporters, what their views were. And then it came to my attention that the gas company had been they had apparently cast the motion to not do this campaign, and I kind of got to wonder, why would the gas company really care? And then I sort of led me to wonder, what do we care what the gas company thinks? And I'm kind of wondering within the composition of this committee, how many are residents and how many are businesses. And there's a really big difference in outlook if you're a resident and a property owner versus a stakeholder. And again, just wondering how a gas company has purview over our economic development decisions. So if I could get a little bit more understanding of the composition of the committee and how many people are residents and how that all works, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Gardner.
Nothing.
Councilmember Webb.
Just a brief one. We met last Friday morning, bright and early, to utilize our vertical-ometers to measure airplane flights coming out of John Wayne on both sides of the bay, and try to get the east side to the west side and the west side to the east side, so that everybody knows that planes are flying over both sides as well as down the middle of the bay, which we accomplished and discussed in great detail this morning at our aviation committee.
Don, that verticometer gets bigger every time I see it.
Councilmember Selich.
I have none.
Councilmember Rosansky.
None, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Henn.
Yes, I had the pleasure of attending 2 events just in the last few days, the first of which was the Balboa Village tree lighting, which occurred just behind the brand-new Balboa Village monument sign, which really looks terrific, and I really appreciate staff's work on that. This was the first annual tree lighting. It was sponsored by the Balboa Village Business Improvement District, and through the good graces of one of our citizens, Dana Pettit, all of this was funded and put together, and so we hope that that will be the first of many years to come by way of trying to build a little excitement and some activity down in Balboa Village for the holidays. And then just this morning, along with Councilmember Webb and Councilmember Rosansky and Mayor Curry, was able to attend the ribbon cutting for the new emergency warning siren system that is now operational. It's including 3 sirens that are strategically placed basically along the peninsula from east to west, and will provide emergency warning notification to tens of thousands of our residents that would be in an inundation zone in the event, for example, of a tsunami or some other sort of emergency situation that would require immediate egress from the peninsula and its environs. And so I wanted to thank staff for their work on this. It was a long time coming. It was, as most of these projects are, much more complicated than would be apparent to the ordinary citizen to get these kinds of things done, and I'm very, very pleased with that, and pleased on behalf of our citizens that we now have that. Thank you.
In addition to the kickoff of the tsunami sirens, we also cut the ribbon this last week, along with my council colleagues, for the San Miguel Road widening, which, as most of you know, is one of the most difficult interchanges in the city. I want to thank staff for their diligent work in getting that project completed in time for Black Monday, and for helping with the shoppers at Fashion Island, and also the many hundreds of people every day who use the medical buildings, the medical offices there in the adjacent neighborhood. And also I want to congratulate our finance staff, because we've successfully closed the financing for the City Hall, brought the cost of funds in at less than 4.5% for 30 years, and because we were able to take advantage of the Build America bonds, which are lapsing at the end of the calendar year, we saved more than $720,000 annually in interest cost during the life of this financing. So congratulations to staff for their good work in getting that done. Okay, consent calendar.
All matters listed under consent calendar, items 1 through 10, are considered by the council to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. The city council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the council votes on the motion, unless members of the council, staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and/or removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Members of the public who wish to discuss a consent calendar item should come forward to the lectern upon invitation by the mayor and state their name and item number. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium.
Thank you. Does any member of the council have an item they wish to pull from the consent calendar? Mr. Selich.
I have none.
Mr. Rosansky.
None, thank you.
Mr. Hitt.
And none for me.
Councilmember Daigle.
Yes, 4 and 6.
Councilmember Gardner. Councilmember Webb.
None.
And I have none. Staff, any items to pull?
No, sir.
Does any member of the audience have an item on the consent calendar they'd like to pull for discussion? Please come forward. Mr. Moser. Number 2, thank you. Okay, any other items? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Is there a motion?
Yes, there is. Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent calendar items 1 through 10, with the exception of items 2, 4, and 6.
Second motion.
Motion made and seconded. Please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Next item will be item 2. Mr. Moser, please come forward.
My name is Jim Moser. I live in District 3. I just wanted to remind you that the amendment before you appears to be a bit of fine-tuning to a paragraph of policy that already appears to be in conflict with the city charter. Section 407 of the city charter is very clear that the persons elected to serve on the city council are supposed to hold, expected to hold 2 regular meetings every month of the year, including December. But if you look at this paragraph, you'll see that it says a single meeting in December is sufficient. It can be very perplexing to the electorate when the persons we entrust with our affairs feel free to enact conflicting policies and between which they can pick and choose at their own convenience. And this would seem like it might be an opportunity to ask city staff if they can think of a way either to bring this policy paragraph into conformity with the city charter, or the charter into conformity with the policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moser. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any comments on this, on the issues raised by Mr. Moser?
the action contemplated tonight, as well as the policies consistent with the history of the functioning of the city, it's within your authority to take the action that's before you, and the policy is sufficient.
Thank you.
I move the recommended action.
Motion, is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? Any members of the audience wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Item 4, Councilmember Daigle.
Yes, this is to place landscaping along Bristol. The description is a dirt shoulder, and if you've been up there, that's somewhat of an embellishment. And it's a well-traveled gateway. We have high-end auto dealers in that area. And my question is, with this agreement, are we there yet as far as initiating this project? Or if you can speak to that, please.
I ask the Public Works Director, Steve Batum, to comment.
Yes, Councilwoman Daigle, this is it. We've got the money,
Okay,
which
great.
is awesome.
Okay.
We were fortunate to be competitive, and so the project's a go.
Great. Well, thank you. And I noticed that the match, there's a slight city match of 25%. The other monies are coming from outside, and that's coming from the Bristol Street Relinquishment Fund. Is there any other monies in that fund? Well, is there a balance to that fund?
You know, I have to check with
Okay.
finance to see what that balance is, but I think there's a few more in there.
Okay, because my next question is, I'm wondering with that account, which is probably for that particular geography of Bristol Street, as well as the Sholey Fund, which was for a lawsuit settlement, if we can move towards the planning of Bristol Street South.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be something that we could move forward, yeah.
Okay.
Now that we
So we can start doing that then,
would
too.
like to apply for another grant, get some more
Okay.
money.
Great. Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I'll make the motion to move the item.
Motion, is there a second? Second. Motion and second. Any member of the audience wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Item 6, Councilmember Daigle.
Yes. My question on this one is, we're replacing a cabinet up at Newport Coast Drive, and there's some cabinets right up in that same area by Lexus. There's one in particular that's obtrusive, and I noticed the source of funding here is the Emergency Management Agency. Is there any way that those funds can be accessed for removal of other boxes in the city, or how does that work?
Well, actually, these funds are specific to the damage that occurred from the January 2010 storm. So
Okay.
that was because of a fallen tree. So I think we were reimbursed for some other funds as well, but those were essentially related to the storm. So I don't think there's additional ways to fund other projects through that.
Okay, so if we wanted to fund something up in that area, then we'd have to look at Sholey or some other source.
That would
Okay,
be correct.
thank you very much. I'll move that item as well.
Motion, is there a second? Second. Motion and second. Any member of the audience wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
We're now at oral reports from City Council on committee activities. Councilmember Daigle.
I represent the cities of Newport Beach, Costa Mesa, and Fountain Valley at the Southern California Association of Governments. And SCAG held an economic summit in Los Angeles, and Governor Gray Davis, he presented most of the information to the summit. And there was also strong participation and support from Governor George Deukmejian, who sends his regards to the mayor. We talked a little bit at the break. As well as Beat the Panama Canals Chair Roy Herian. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And many other business representatives from Los Angeles, including the LA EDC. We have here the Orange County Business Council, BizFed, the entertainment industry, and the building industry. So it was very well attended. And one of the messages out of the meeting is that some of these folks really like our incoming Governor-elect Jerry Brown to be granted emergency powers at the next legislative session. And those powers would be granted for an economic recession. And the reasoning is that the governor now has emergency powers for mudslides and earthquakes. And in order to deal with this economic crisis, then he ought to have these powers. And the idea was heavily promoted by Gray Davis. I suppose I don't see an economic recession as a natural disaster. It's more of a disaster of our own making. But there will be a strong push for that. Most of the presentations focused on threats to the regional economy, and there was also a presentation by Lucy Dunn of the Orange County Business Council. And there was a lot of focus on the entertainment industry. They're losing a lot of business to the state of Georgia, who's providing tax credits, and they allow for above-the-line expenditures. So the environment for making movies is very favorable in other parts of the state, of the country, and the world. And one of the problems is when Tom Hanks goes to make a movie, the cinematographers and the set builders and the makeup people don't go with him. So the state then loses additional revenue. People file for unemployment, so it's kind of a double whammy. Right now, according to the California Tax Foundation, California is ranked 49th in terms of favorable tax environments in the United States. Another big threat is in 2014 there will be an expanded Panama Canal, so that's going to be a big boon for East Coast ports. And although earmarks are becoming somewhat taboo, not in Charlestown, which is applying to deepen its port. And Newport Beach, we have now a relationship with the Port of Long Beach, so we want them to thrive for a number of reasons. And the best thing that we have going for our ports is, in addition to the infrastructure, is the location. We're the closest point east of China and Malaysia where a lot of the manufacturing is occurring. One of the things that I really took from it, though, is that that what is going to be happening in the state is that right now, they can no longer come and take monies as they could before. They can no longer raid our local coffers. So they've come up with something new, and it's called realignment, which is basically government speak for cost shifting. So what's going to happen is there's going to be more mandates and more shifting of responsibilities to local government. So we're going to have to carry out, or we're going to be requested to carry out certain things that we haven't in the past. So that was kind of the main parts of the summit. I thought it was very interesting, and there's a lot of people from all over the region, and everyone's really trying to improve our economy. And one final point, within the membership of SCAG, I'm going to be on their Legislative and Communications Committee, so we'll be hearing a lot more about mandates.
Thank you. Councilmember Gardner.
We had the first meeting of our Bicycle Safety Committee this afternoon. It was very well attended. It was very nice to see, in addition to our 6 committee members, a number of the public from other cities as well as our own attending and contributing. I want to thank staff for their contributions. We had a lot of help from Public Works, the police department, and our city manager, and we are off and running, and I expect great results.
Mr. Webb.
I have none.
Mr. Selich.
I have none.
Mr. Rosansky.
None, thank you.
Mr. Hand.
And none for me.
I would only take note that I did attend, not at city expense, the National League of Cities Conference in Denver last week, and had a chance to visit a lot of mayors and council people from around the country. The short answer is that the whole country is hurting. We're doing better than most. Item 11, adoption of the 2010 California Fire Code and the 2009 International Fire Code with amendments. I'd like to open the public hearing. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. This is an urgency ordinance that would allow us to have the 2010 California Fire Code and International Fire Code with local amendments take place and apply from January 1st, 2011 onward. You have a fairly detailed staff report. I'd point you to some supplemental information, which we have provided before, but it shows a summary of what the basics of the statewide consistent code are, as well as some local amendments. Fire Marshal Ron Gamble is here. If you have questions or comments, I defer to you folks as to how much you wanted to hear or how little you wanted to hear about this item, given what's in the staff report.
Well, let me ask, are there questions for staff on this matter? Mr. Rosansky.
I have none.
Okay.
I had
Councilmember Gardner.
one. We approved some of this at our last meeting, did we? I mean, I remember asking a question, and we were dealing with some of this. Now, I'm unclear in my own mind where we are on this, whether we approved part of it or we pushed the whole thing over to this week.
Good.
The last one was the building codes.
Okay, just the building codes. In this one, and I usually marked it and I can't find it, but it seems to me I read that you, as our fire marshal, are able to determine certain areas, high fire hazard areas. Is that correct?
Currently, we're working on a very high fire hazard area with the CAL FIRE maps and Orange County Fire Authority.
So we're still working,
still
we're
in
still
the
waiting on the
process.
state and that sort of thing?
Right now it's at the local level. We've refined the areas, and they're just discussing last-minute changes, and then it's going to go back up to the state, and it should go back up to the state in the next couple of weeks. It's due on the 13th. At that point in time, they'll make the final revision and hopefully send out the final maps sometime whenever the state is.
Sometime before maybe the next fire season?
We hope.
Okay, thank you.
Let me ask, does this address the issue of sprinklers, or is that in the building code?
That's in the building code. That's not addressed here.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? All right, now let me open the public hearing to the public. If there's anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this matter, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Is there a motion?
Move the item.
Second. Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Item 12, Balboa Yacht Basin Rates, resolution related to the increase in slip tie, garage, and apartment rates at the Balboa Yacht Basin. Mr. City Manager, we'll open the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I do have a brief presentation to make about this, and I believe that's why most folks are in the audience. And I wanted to stress this is a revised proposal by the ad hoc committee based on what a number of folks in the audience heard last time. I'm going to point out what those differences are. So just a little bit about the Balboa Yacht Basin. It has about 170 slips and side ties. Most of them, many of them, are 35 feet in length. That becomes important when you look at the proposed rates. And then I show the next common sizes. It has about 31 garages that we rent out, about 200 square feet apiece, and the city pays the electricity there. We also have 3 apartments at the yacht basin. They're 2-bedroom, 1 bath. This is a basic slip and side tie configuration. And we may jump back to that. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but you can kind of see where the slips are and what they look like. I'm going to talk just briefly about the rate history at the Balboa Yacht Basin. You could see we went from, in 1987, $10 a foot for all slips to our current rate here, which is $18, $19, and $23. Sorry, this is a lineal foot. As well as you can see the garage rates and the apartment rates, and those haven't been changed since 2002, which is in part why we're here. Let me talk about some of the principles that the ad hoc committee used in doing this analysis. The rate should be brought to fair market value, but on the low and moderate side of that. We should comply with the obligations of a Department of Boating and Waterways loan. They should be fair, reasonable, and defensible legally. They should be phased in over time to minimize economic disruption. They should be responsive to market conditions and result in a charge that is annually updated. So those are the principles with which the committee went about this work. The proposal is as follows. The goal is to take an average of 7 low and moderate Newport Harbor marinas. And this is a change from last time. We originally proposed about 13 different marinas, including more on the high end, including the California Recreation marinas, or CalRec. There's a number of those that were in the previous index. We also factored in current discounting in the marketplace today. If you commit to a certain period of lease, typically a year, you can get a discount of anywhere from 15 to 25%. So we factored that into the pricing from the rack rates. The proposal, too, is to arrive at a number I'll talk about in just a second, over 3 periods, March of 11, March of 12, and then March of 13. We originally had that in January, but this allows us to provide a little bit more notice to folks about the increase. We've also accounted for, in the numbers you'll see, what's called a possessory interest tax equivalent, and that is the fact that the folks who rent slips from us are in a public marina. The county assessor charges them a possessory interest tax, which is the equivalent of a property tax, but paid for when you're just leasing or renting a public space. So we account for that in the pricing. The proposal is to set the slip fees in 10-foot increments and base the fees on the size of a slip. I'm going to talk a little bit about the public outreach we've done. We've had 2 formal meetings with a number of folks in the audience and the 3 ad hoc committee members. We had one in the council chambers here in September, another in November. We tried to provide as best notification as we could to all the tenants of the BYB. And then I've continued to correspond with all who signed in on the meeting sign-in sheets as to this meeting and the agenda item. And then I just note that the apartment rental increases have to comply with California law relating to rental housing, and they will. These are the proposed slip rates, and you can see here's where we are currently from 18 to 23, depending on, this is per lineal foot per month, depending on the size of the slip. You can tell where the rack rates were and now where the discounted rates are. See, some of the rack rates are discounted fairly significantly. Others are not at all because we couldn't find a discounted bargain on that at this time. So the proposed rates, here's where it shows where our current rates are as a percentage of where we think the rate should be in 2013. So the proposal before you tonight is to take those incrementally by percentage of the final rate, the goal rate. And you can see the net differences, again, after 3 periods. Some of them small, some of them more significant. These rates don't include inflation, but and therefore the resolution reflects percentages instead of fixed dollar amounts. There are proposed garage rates in front of you too. This was also done with looking around at comparables. The resolution suggests that the rates go to $262.50 a month from $200, and then the following year to $325, and then be adjusted by CPI. The apartment rates, similar recommendation. We bring 2 to $2,000 a month, which is where the third is at. Move all 3 to $2,250 by March 2012, and then consumer price index. And then if a new tenant comes in, we'd go to $2,500 a month, then to CPI. So the recommended action tonight is as follows. If you adopt the resolution, you would formalize a Newport Harbor Marina Index. This is the same marina index we looked at last time with the moorings. It's a different index, though, from what the stakeholders first looked at. Again, it's a smaller index. It reflects more of low and moderate income marinas. The resolution also sets the 2012 marina rates, and it sets a process in place for the 2012 and 2013 marina rates. It also sets specific amounts for garages and apartments, but then adjusts those by CPI, sets apartment rates. It authorizes the Harbor Resources Manager to adjust the index based on the manager's own knowledge about what the marketplace is about. And that would have to be, he would have to do notification to the stakeholder group via the website. If the Harbor Resources Manager thought that the rate increases were not consistent with the market, the council would be required to act further. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd welcome any of you or your colleagues' questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from Mr. Kiff? Councilmember Gardner.
One question on the Harbor Resources Manager able to adjust it on its own, and everybody disagrees. Is there an appeal process, or, I mean, would it come to the council at some point, or to you, or does he just get to be king?
There's always, there isn't a formal appeals process besides your own right to amend a resolution. So you could come back and change the resolution. But that resolution would come to us, so we would have that opportunity. Right.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Hand.
Yes, and following up on that, there is stricture in here, though, that he needs to select, if he does want to propose a substitute marina, needs to be, in his view, a low to moderate price marina in substitution.
That's correct.
So I think that does provide some reasonable assurance that the index won't be gamed, one direction or another here from where we're starting. I did have one other question, Dave, with regard to the rates that are now proposed. Can you give us some sense of, they are certainly lower than what we started with by way of a proposal as we were looking at this. Can you give us some sense now of how much lower these proposed rates are than what we started with before we went through the public outreach activity that we did?
I'll give you an example. If you could read the screen behind me, let's look at the 2013 goal rate here on the end. This number, for instance, $21.39, it was $28.39. This $29.76 number was $35.15. The next one, this was on the low end, $43.33 previously, and that applied to both distances, so both slip lengths.
So as a result of the public outreach and the comment and the further deliberations of the committee, then these rates have come down quite a lot, actually, since the initial proposal. Thanks, Dave.
Mr. Selich?
Dave, do we know that the county is charging possessory interest tax on all the slips there? Or do some get charged and others don't?
That's hard for us to know. I think individuals would have to comment on that. Our assumption is that they do, and our conversations with them has been that they think they have everyone associated with the slip.
The county thinks
the county
so.
does, yeah.
Mr. Rosansky?
Yeah, I was going to comment, the fact that although we are showing, we're showing percentages for 2011, 2012, and 2013, and then the goal rate is in their second to last column there. We will be annually reviewing those charges of the Marina Index, I guess, what you want to call it. And it's very possible if the continuing situation in the harbor that there's more vacancy and those marinas bring those rates down, that our rates will not reach those levels. It really just depends on what the market does. So we felt that this also brought into play the fact that the market is in a flux, and that obviously there are vacancies in the harbor. There may be more a year from now, maybe less, hopefully less. I mean that the economy's turned around, we'll all be doing better. But but just because it says 2013 rates there doesn't mean that it'll actually hit that.
Councilmember Daigle?
Yes, I was wondering if there's any discussion at the committee level or otherwise about privatizing the marina aspect of it. It would allow us to find the market, and it might even increase the level of service out there. I mean, I don't even know if you can buy a block of ice. I know you can buy a chili cheese omelet, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are as far as if that was discussed at all.
No.
Okay.
Remember, we do have the marinas management contracted out to Dave New.
Okay.
If you're talking about more like entire ownership and profit and loss, that hasn't been discussed at this point.
Well, the contract being, and I don't really know, so you'd have to inform me that we pay them a kind of a management fee versus soliciting an RFP or bids and saying, if you were to manage this, CalREC, BASIN, so on and so forth, what would that look like? What would you charge? What would the city get out of it? That's what I think I was thinking about.
I see. Yeah, that wasn't something under consideration at this point. Certainly, it would be the council's prerogative.
Mr. Ham?
It wasn't really, I'm sorry, it wasn't really included in our, I don't think in our mission statement for our committee. It was more to look at the rates and things like that. I mean, certainly that's an option in the future.
For the future, okay.
One of the things that we did talk about that was raised in public comment is the need for improvements from time to time in this marina. And so I would encourage staff to consider that, especially in light of these rate increases, and perhaps get some input from the slip renters in this marina, and let's see if there are some improvements that might make sense over time with this marina to make it even a little better than it is today.
All right, if there's no other council questions, I will open the floor to the audience. Anyone who'd like to speak on this matter, please come forward. You'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name, please, when you come to the podium. Come right on up. Don't be shy.
Never been accused of being shy. My name is Brian Mason. I'm a Balboa Basin yacht basin tenant. I appreciate and applaud the ad hoc committee's revised rate proposal and concur that the revised rate proposal is much more reasonable than the initial proposal, and I thank you for that. What I'm going to focus my comments on tonight is the opportunity to provide an advance payment program for those Balboa Yacht Basin tenants willing to pay up to 12 months in advance in exchange for a reasonable discount. I sent each council member and city staff a detailed letter last week via email. I hope some of you might have had an opportunity to look at that. If you did, thank you very much for your time you invested. This program would provide much needed cash immediately within the city's current fiscal year. As I illustrated in my letter to council, the cash could be used to pay down Titleland's debt, saving the county potentially, or saving the city potentially millions of dollars over time. And such a process would be no different than any one of us paying an extra payment on our home mortgage every year to bring down the interest and pay the debt off earlier. Alternatively, the funds could also be used for urgent Titleland's project expenses throughout the harbor, or to help kickstart Titleland's projects that were still awaiting grant or loan money approval. I think this program would be a financial win for both the city and the tenants. I think, however, it would need to be, in order to be successful, I think you would have to set that discount rate at an interesting enough rate to get the tenants, get the consumers willing to pay up that much money in advance. With that, I'd like to please include an advance payment program in tonight's resolution. Alternatively, since the rates do not go into effect until March, council could ask city staff to take such a program under consideration, give a report back to council in January or February, and consider it at that point. I thank you very much for your time and the hard work of the ad hoc committee and the council members. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers, please come forward. You don't have to raise your hand, just come on down.
Hi.
Good evening. Just state your name, sir.
My name is John Shalay. I own a small sailboat. And I would like to mention to the council in front of me that this harbor was a very nice sailing harbor for a lot of young people got involved sailing. I happen to be teaching in UCI sailing program. And as you can see, the last couple of years, is no young people can afford anymore having a sailboat in Newport Beach. I'm retired, so hopefully I can afford that for a few more years in the future. But you have to think about the young people who would like to be part of the sailing association here in Newport Beach. Absolutely, it's impossible for them to do it. You can buy a small boat, but you can't keep it any place. So when you're talking about increasing the rates, and I appreciate the fact that you went down, if you would have stayed there, I guarantee half of your boating slip would have been empty because people cannot afford it, especially in times like right now in economics the way it's happened. But think about the future of the Newport Harbor Sailing Association. Think about the yacht clubs. Think about the young people who hopefully will replace our old folks when we leave this part of the world. So it's very simple, but it's very difficult. I know you guys have plans for earning so much money, but think about the future generations who's not be able to stay in Newport Beach and sail and enjoy this beautiful facilities that we have in here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any other speakers? Please come forward.
Hi, my name is Jory Lester. I've been in this area for over 50 years and have had a boat in the marina for, I guess, 25 years of that 50, so very familiar with the area. I'm going to abbreviate this because some of it was discounted in your presentation, but from the beginning, the ad hoc committee said that they were going to be transparent and would discuss their logic in the rate increases. To date, we have not received the comparative numbers that were used to calculate the rates or discounts used for the substandard amenities and taxes we pay. The city has a responsibility to the community to provide services back to the people they serve. This, in turn, is funded by that community. It's not right, in my opinion, to single out a group of people to fund a city project through a loan to build a new marina that will not benefit the people who are financing the paying of that loan. In your argument for higher rate slip fees, the term fair market value for the use of city assets. If that's the case, why is American Legion Marina, which is owned by the city, only being increased $2 to $14 and $16 per foot, depending on where they are in that marina? Per your calculations, that's not the going rate. The American Legion docks don't have individual electricity meters, and they don't pay taxes directly. I would like the City Council to delay a vote tonight and reconvene the ad hoc committee to have more meetings and discussions on where these rates came from and how they calculated the total numbers. Because as of right now, the numbers that you're presenting, especially the first ones, and then you came back and said, oh, well, gee, we really cut those down by quite a bit. Well, those first numbers were extremely high. So this seems like it was a reverse bait and switch type proposal. Throw out a high number, then cut it back, and everybody thinks they're getting off with a good deal. I disagree. In my case, my fee is going up 20% per year for the next 3 years. That doesn't sound reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other speakers, please come forward. Okay, seeing no other speakers, we will close public comment period and bring us back to council. Let me, if I may, just ask Mr. Selich, I know you and I talked about this briefly, the idea that Mr. Mason brought up for a prepayment discount. Did the committee consider that idea and have thoughts about it?
We did. We talked about it, and I think at the end of our discussion that we didn't feel that we would gain any appreciable benefit by moving ahead with that.
Thank you. Mr. Brzezinski.
Well, just to expand on it, the problem with that is that even if there is a chunk of money that comes in up front, we have to backfill that money later on. It's not like it's free money or, it's extra money. It just comes in a little sooner. We still need the money. I mean, Mr. Mason was correct in that if we did make an extra payment, like someone did on their mortgage, we would pay a lot less and be done in, I think, 19 years instead of 30 years. But unfortunately, the money's needed elsewhere, and so that's not a viable alternative. I would like to address the one comment that the gentleman made about the American Legion, because I did bring up exactly that same comment myself in our committee, and we have discussed it, and it will be a subject of discussion in the future as we look at all the users in the harbor. So although you guys are teed up here second after the mooring owners, I mean, we figure we have at least another year's worth of work on looking at these leases and situations in the harbor. So they will be addressed in time. Just can't get to it all in one meeting. We'd have to rent out Honda Center, I think, with all the people that would show up if we try to approach the whole harbor in one gulp. So, we've spent a lot of time and effort on this. We made a promise to the community that we would do our best to come up with a fair rate, but a fair market rate, what we feel is a fair market rate, and I think we've done that. Certainly there's some categories that are going to be subjected to a much more of an increase than others, but basically that's what boating is in the harbor. 30-foot boats rent slips a lot cheaper than 60-foot boats. And that's just the way it is in our harbor. And so we felt that, if we're looking at a fair market model and valuation, that's where we needed to be headed with our grouping. As it was, we did, if you'll notice, and you can flip back to the other slides or not, but we did create a fourth category there. Used to be 50 to 70, is that what it was, or 75? And because we felt that it wasn't fair to the boats in the 50 to 60-foot range, because they were going to wind up paying more because they were lumped in with bigger boats, that we carved out that second category, or fourth category, I'm sorry, just to make it more fair. So, with that, I'll make a motion that we adopt recommended action.
I'll second.
Motion second. Mr. Hinn.
Yes, just to follow out of the American Legion discussion for a moment, we do have to take these things one at a time, really, because these issues are so complex. We do need to allow for public input. That takes time, too. And so with regard to the prioritization of things, the American Legion situation is under the purview of an existing long-term lease. And so while we will get to a look at that, in my view, it was less of a priority here because we've already signed a long-term lease on that. But nevertheless, we will still have a look at it as we go along. You know, I'm very confident that the rates that we've established here, as you can see at almost every turn, we took the lesser avenue of price when we looked at this. We do have a mandate to establish fair market value, and we did at really almost every elective chance here. We changed the Marina Index to focus on low to moderate indexes. That was in view of the fact that the Balboa Yacht Basin is not a high premium, high amenity marina, and so gave effect to the possessory interest tax. I mean, we did really seek to take the lesser route that was still incorporated a view of market to get to this answer, and so I'm pleased that that the final answer is a good bit lower, and I'm really personally very confident that it was not a reverse bait and switch that we were going after. This really was a sincere process, and I'm glad for the outcome that we have here.
Mr. Selich.
Yeah, well, one thing I'd like to say is that I do have a little bit of concern about the amount of the discounting that we've done on this. In response to Councilwoman Daigle's comment on leasing it out, if we were to lease this out to a private operator, I guarantee you that the rates would be substantially higher, plus they would have the ability to adjust them on a month-to-month basis on what the market is doing, where we tend to get locked in on an annual basis here. So I think we tried real hard to keep these rates as reasonable as possible, but still have the, meet the intent of getting fair market value on it. I do have a little bit of concern about how much we've discounted them, but I'm satisfied that we're close enough that we can move ahead this evening.
Councilmember Daigle?
I would say, one of the city has been negligent about administering its fees, so I will support the increase. And I realize while it wasn't a charge of the committee, I think in the future, if we could have a CalREC or a BASIN take a look at it, and I agree with Councilman Selich, they're going to find the market. And they'd also come in and say, look, you need bigger slips here, you need to reconfigure this or that. I think that also the level of service could increase. We could get better maintenance, and I know that there's others in council that philosophically believe the private sector can run things pretty well when given the opportunity. So I hope in the future that this is something the committee can be evaluating as well.
Thank you. Any other comments? I would just say, first of all, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. It's never an easy or fun thing to raise fees, and that's evidenced by the fact that these haven't been raised in 8 years. And that's what makes the increase at this point in time a little more difficult for people and difficult for the council. And I think we've learned the lesson that we can't allow these fees to go so long without routine adjustments. The issue is raised about amenities in the harbor, and certainly the biggest amenity is simply the ability to navigate in the harbor. We are now undertaking the dredging of the lower bay for the first time since President Roosevelt dredged the bay initially. And we're about $23 million short of the ability to do that. And I believe that by the time we're done, all of the taxpayers in the city will end up contributing to the cost of that project. But before we do that, it's important that those who are harbor users also participate in that cost. With that, Mr. Rosansky.
Yeah, just one other thing. Dave, is there any problem releasing the information on the Marine Index and the discounting as we discovered it?
Not at all.
Yeah,
Can do
if
that.
you could make that
And
available.
just as a clarification, the gentleman asked specifically about the possessory interest tax. That's 1%. You're charged 1%, just like your property tax, so that's how you do the math on that deduction.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like a small amount because it's levied per lineal foot per month. It does add up to a couple $100 by the end of the time.
But as far as the actual
discounting, yeah.
marinas we used and
Sure.
the information that we accumulated as far as what they charge and their discounted rates and things like
Yes.
that, so they could see how the fees were established.
Seeing no further comments, please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Public comments, Madam City Clerk.
Public comments are invited on non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Would anyone like to speak on a matter not on the agenda? Please come forward. All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comments. Is there a motion for reconsideration? Madam City Clerk?
A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Thank you. Any motions? Seeing none. We have two adjournments in memory tonight. I'm going to do them in a different order since I see Mr. Drellishak has joined us tonight. The first is for Joe Cerrell. Joe was one of California's most accomplished and successful political consultants. A Democrat, Joe worked for John and Robert Kennedy, Pat Brown, Jess Unruh, and dozens of other state and local candidates. He was a personal friend of mine and was highly regarded by political leaders in both parties. I was privileged to work with Joe in 1980 on a ballot measure to prohibit public employee strikes in Los Angeles County. And although he took a lot of heat from his union supporters, he held tough and helped lead our campaign to victory. Joe is very proud of his cameo appearance in the 1972 movie The Candidate. And he was a technical consultant on that film, which is why it is one of the best and most accurate political movies of all time. We are also gathered to remember Newport Beach resident Peggy Drellishak, who passed away peacefully on November 24th. Peggy was born and raised in the Los Angeles area and went on to earn her college degree from the University of Southern California. After graduation, she moved to Pasadena, where she began her professional career and met and married her husband, Kenneth. The Drellishaks lived in San Marino until relocating to Newport Beach in April of 1999. Throughout her lifetime, Peggy remained an active USC alumna, volunteer, and parent. She was, of course, a dedicated Trojan fan. She was also a volunteer for the Pasadena chapters of the National Christ Child Society and the Right to Life League of Southern California. Peggy is survived by her husband of 43 years, Ken, their children Steve, Scott, and Stacy, their spouses, granddaughters Rose and Ava, her sister, and many cousins, nieces, and nephews. Services have been held, and in lieu of flowers, the family requests donations in her name to the USC Norris Cancer Center or a charity of your choice. We are adjourned.